Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 661. I had the white pieces and started off with c4. My opponent goes with e5, the reverse Sicilian, a reasonable response. Actually, the most popular response to this is the to the English opening these days. So I go with g3, one of the top two moves here. He goes knight f6, knight c3, and he goes g6. So g6 is kind of a rare response. It indicates, which is often the case, when black is playing a reverse Sicilian setup against the English opening, he often goes for a closed Sicilian, although usually the line selected is one of these lines with the bishop coming out. The other way to play it is to go for an open Sicilian with just d5, open reverse Sicilian. But, well, g6 is another kind of closed Sicilian with the fianchetto over here. So I go bishop g2. It's not an unheard of position, just not the most common way to play. And now I go with e4. I'm going for my Botvinnik setup with the pawn triangle here and the knight coming to e2. Let's see, he could play d6 here, but he castled. Put my knight on e2. And he played c6. Let's see, if he had played d6, just to look at, we'll get kind of a similar position anyway. So he plays d6 later. So it looks like we're going out of the opening book here, but in fact, after a couple of moves, we transpose back. Played knight a6. And I went with d3. Yeah, maybe it was this point I wanted to look at it. Instead of knight a6, where he really leaves the opening book, he could have played d6 here. And we would have gotten a similar kind of position from if he had played d6 before c6. So what's interesting here is that white has a couple of choices of ways to play it. For example, if I play d4 here, this is just a fianchetto setup against the King's Indian defense. And so that's a fine way to play. Or I could continue as in the game with d3 and go for the Botvinnik setup. So either of those are playable. Anyway, he played knight a6, so we're out of the opening book at this point. I went with the Botvinnik setup here. And he brought his knight around to c7. So I'm just bringing my bishop out. It looks like some normal developments occurring here. I dropped my bishop all the way back to d2 just because on e3, which is otherwise a nice square, it always runs into this knight g4 thing, which is annoying. Let's see, he played d5. And so that was the point of this knight maneuver here. He routed his knight around like this to support this central pawn push. So I exchanged one pair of pawns here. And then I didn't want to keep taking and leave myself with a backwards d-pawn. So I played queen c1, which threatens the h6 pawn. And he played a very funny move here. He played bishop e6, just ignoring that threat. I was expecting king h7. That's a very typical move in this kind of position. What's funny is the chess engine likes the move h5. I think most players don't really like that kind of thing because it creates these dark squared weaknesses. It may be a problem in the long run. So that's why king h7 is normally preferred, just holding on to it. Anyway, he went bishop e6, so I grabbed the pawn. I mean, why not? I'm just a pawn up. But, well, it's funny. He gets some kind of counterplay later in the game on the open h-file. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's see. He goes rook c8, putting his rook opposite my queen. I did this exchange here and then played queen to e1. So a couple of pretty normal looking moves to me, and the evaluation suddenly shifted at that point to being back to equal. So now the chess engine thinks that black has got enough compensation for the pawn. And if you look at it, that exchange of the bishop has lifted his king off the back rank. His rook can get over here very quickly. So that's the problem, is that black gets to the h-file before I do. Now, it's not like black is winning here. It's just an equal position. But up to this point, it was better for white. White's really just a pawn up with correct play. But, well, I have to play vigorously in the center. That's the recommendation of the chess engine, and I think I agree. So this is not an immediate threat, so I did not have to respond to that right away. It's just kind of a long-term issue. I have to keep that in mind. Watch out for tactics along that file and get my queen out of the way eventually. But more pressing, I guess, is to initiate some activity in the center here to distract black from trying to line up on the h-file. So I think this is pretty logical. You push in the center with d4, and after some exchanges, actually this is giving the pawn back at least temporarily and getting off of the c-file this way. And it looks like white has a more active position now. The rooks can come to these open files. Maybe I can start to harass his queen a little bit, and this pawn can probably be rounded up, so I can stay a pawn ahead without getting into so much trouble on the H file. Anyway, like I said, after this, actually the game is about even. He plays rook h8, so he has compensation for the pawn. I play h4. He goes with d4 now, locking up the center. It's often a good idea when you're going to attack on the flanks. Lock up the center so that your opponent can't get any counterplay over here, and that frees you up to concentrate on your kingside attack. Also, it kicks this knight around, which it doesn't have any great squares. So he plays queen d7. So I think he, wrong move, queen d7. I think he played a pretty good game through through much of this section. He just would kind of overlook things at key moments, sort of like the way I play. I play good for a while and then overlook things. Anyway, knight d2. This move b5 doesn't seem to be really to the point. The chess engine wants him to continue with knight g4. Game might go like this, knight f3, and then f6, queen d2. So maybe opening up a square for his king to get out of the way. He can bring some more pieces over, or maybe he can route the bishop around, or perhaps I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what the plan is here, but it seems like his king is pretty secure here, and he still has ideas of putting more pressure on the H file. Anyway, so I'm not sure what the point of b5 was. It seems sort of random. Anyway, I played my rook over here to c1. Played knight to g4 now. Went bishop h3, and he played g5. So at this point, because he made this kind of random b5 move, it took a little bit of the steam out of his attack, and actually white is better again at this point. But I need to play the right moves here, and the right move here is knight f3, defending my h-pawn with the knight. And this knight can't be so easily dislodged now that this knight is on g4, so he can't put a bishop on g4, for example. So this looks like this would be pretty good. Once again, the engine wants to play f6 and queen d2 and get into this kind of situation and thinks white's better here. Okay, but I was worried about this building pressure, and I went ahead and exchanged, getting rid of these pieces around my king. Well, this keeps black's attack going, and let's see. I need to play something like f3 here to stay on the game. f3, say bishop to h3 and rook to f2, and I've kind of organized some kind of defense, although it's looking a little bit shaky. With it looks like he can win the h-pawn here, but it looks like this is still playable. Actually, the move I played should lose immediately. So if you want to take a second and think about what you would play as black here. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. If you saw the game, or if you look over here, you'll see what my opponent played was bishop to h3, which picks up the exchange, but actually gives me a lot of compensation. The chess engine rates that position as about equal. So the winning line here is actually taking the knight off. And the point of this is just to clear this diagonal with tempo. After I take the knight back, the queen just hops in here to h3, and there's a devastating attack here. I can't really deal with all the threats. So anyway, that would be winning. So you gotta look for those winning chances and take them. Instead, he went for the material. He went bishop h3, and let's see. I just push on with f4. I'm going to try and hold on to my pawns here, and force him to take the rook right away. I can't save the rook, but after f4, I'm threatening to save it. So I couldn't save it the previous move, but now I'm threatening to. So he takes. I take with the queen so that my king is guarding these entry squares for his rook. He comes in with queen g4. And now knight f3 is a move that keeps white in the game, and maybe even a little better. I'm down the exchange, but I have a couple pawns, and the attack is not going anywhere at the moment. I'm controlling some squares here. This knight is controlling that square. My queen is controlling that square. The pawn is controlling that square. So it's not so easy for his queen to line up on the h-file. And if it does go to, say his queen goes to h5, let's erase some of these other arrows, I can bring my queen over to g2 and defend the h-file that way. So it looks like I'm holding on here. So I think the engine rated this actually as a slight edge to white still. Even down the exchange, just having those extra pawns, it likes that. Okay, so I played queen g2 here with the same idea of trying to hold on to the h file, but this allows him to take some of my pawns off. Let's see. He starts with this knight e6 move. And, you know, one thing I was missing here was I was missing that this knight move. So both of us were missing things. This is where I start to miss things. I was missing that knight move. I was missing things before. I can't say this is where I start. It opened up the c file. So I really need to take here first. That pulls his rook away from the h file. And then I could play something like queen f3 and try and go into some kind of endgame like this. But I think black is better in this endgame. He can start to take some pawns here. Uses extra material. But that might be playable. Anyway, king f2. He is once again losing. He takes my rook. I take with the knight. Fortunately, it was defended. I totally didn't even see that file was opened. And he plays e takes f4. And then taking back, he is just inviting his rook in. So I mean his knight into the scene here. So I didn't want to take back. I played knight to e2, trying to get my knight back so I can guard some of these squares. And I plays f takes g3 with check. So that was the main thing that rook exchange on the c file did, is it pulled my pieces away from defense of my king side here, which was always a bit precarious, and then that gave him the time to pick up some pawns. This is why black is winning here. He's got his pawns back and he's up the exchange and he's still attacking. So let's see. I played knight takes g3. I went queen f4 check. I went king e1. I think he stays winning through most of this. Queen e3 check. Went king to d1. And now, yeah, knight f4 was his mistake. Kind of lets me back in the game, although he's probably still better after that. But he could just... oh, no, actually, there's a thing that I missed once again. Okay, we'll get to that. Anyway, the threat here is knight to f5, forking the queen and king. And so he needs to move the king back to f8, that's one idea, or move the queen with queen takes d3. Either of those would solve his problems. But instead he jumped in here with knight f4, attacking my queen. So I played knight f5 check. He went king f8. And then I totally did not see that my knight was also attacking his queen. I was just trying to get counterplay against his king here and get something going with his pawn, try and distract him from the attack. But I should really just grab the queen now. So after the king moves, knight takes. He has to take my queen right away. He has no time to grab the knight. And because of that, my knight is defending the queen. We get into this endgame where actually I'm a little better with the two knights against the rook and an extra pawn. So anyway, one mistake after another. So I played queen f3 here, moving my queen away from his knight, not realizing that I could have just taken his queen. And now we go into the endgame, and he's winning this endgame. He's got one of his pawns back, and his pieces are active. And let's see, knight takes f3. Yeah, I have to take his queen back, and knight takes d3. Yeah, so he gets 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he's got all his pawns back, so he's just up the exchange. So this is a winning endgame. I grab a pawn too, but still, it's still a winning endgame for black. It's hard for my knights to defend all these scattered pawns. And let's see, he plays the endgame fine. So he keeps a win through all of this section. So let's just go forward. You know, he's using his rook and his knight to try and scoop my pawns. My drawing chances here lie in sacrifices. If I can sacrifice one of the knights for if I can trade a knight for a rook and sacrifice the other knight for some pawns, I might get into some kind of drawn endgame. But anyway, pretty slim chances, actually. But the more pawns I can get rid of, the better. You know, the knight versus rook endgame is a draw. So if the knights got traded off and the pawns got removed, there's still drawing chances. But anyway, he's quicker to gobble up my pawns. And it's just hard for me to hold on to everything here. Until this point, yeah, he played king e7 here. So my last move, knight f to d6, threatened his rook. I think right here, this is probably a time pressure mistake. He could just play something like rook to d4, and he's still got that winning edge. He's up the exchange, and now he's also up 2 pawns. So that's why it's one of the reasons why the rook is a stronger piece in the endgame. It just has an easier time scooping up those pawns than the knights do. They have to hop around a lot to try and attack things. And pawns can outrun knights sometimes. So anyway, yeah, in time pressure he played king e7. I played knight takes e4, and he resigned. Although there was really no reason for him to resign here. The best I can hope for is a draw. I can't really mate with the 2 knights. I mean, technically there are mates that you can accomplish with the 2 knights, but yeah, because he still has 1 pawn on the board. But I don't think I could ever get to that. So he could have played on. In fact, black is the only one with realistic winning chances because black has the extra pawn. But anyway, maybe he was just disgusted or a little bit annoyed by the time situation, and he resigned here. So anyway, it was a fun game. I hope you guys like this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.